Independence Day, everybody! This July 4th, see why the Battle of Lexington and Concord should be an epic summer blockbuster release. No, before you say it, TV movies with fictional characters in which the battle is featured do not count. We're talking about a theatrical release with John Milius epicness, Michael Bay explosiveness, Jerry Bruckheimer bloatness, John Wayne jingoism, Sylvester Stallone toughness, and Chuck Norris badassery. Yeah! Act 1. Beginnings, pages 1 through 10. In the 1760s, the Sons of Liberty lead the people of Boston in protesting and rioting over taxation without representation. British Army regiments are sent in 1668. On March 5th, 1770, regulars fire into a snowball-throwing mob, killing 5 Bostonians, including Christmas Atkins, a free black man. Local silversmith Paul Revere inflames colonial passings by his engraving of the Boston Massacre. The British Parliament passes the Tea Act, giving the East India Company a monopoly on selling tea directly to the colonists without a tax, admitting a parliamentary right to tax Americans, and cutting into the smuggling business of one John Hancock. No, not that John Hancock. When the ships with the tea arrive in Boston Harbor, Hancock and another son of liberty, Samuel Adams, keep the cargo from being unloaded. Royal Governor Thomas Hutchinson refuses to let the ships leave with the tea. Out in the country, the town of Lexington burns tea on their common green in protest. On December 16th, 1773, Sons of Liberty, dressed as Mohawks, no, not those Mohawks, dump 90,000 pounds of tea into the harbor. Among the Mohawks is Paul Revere. From the docks, Sammy Adams and Johnny Hancock watch the Boston Tea Party. Paul Revere spreads the word of the Boston Tea Party on horseback. The other colonies follow their example with different methods of protesting, including burning the tea. Inciting incident, pages 10 through 15. Summer 1774, Parliament passes the course of the intolerable, the insufferable acts, closing the harbor until the Bostonians pay for the tea, revoking the original charter of the colony, replacing it with a sterner British ruled government, and quartering troops in private homes. Hutchinson is recalled, replaced by General Thomas Gage, who declares martial law, hoping to contain the Boston's rebellious attitude in Boston. Instead, groups like the Sons of Liberty, the Committee of Correspondence, and the Mechanics spread word around the colonies. Every colony sends food and provisions to Boston over a narrow strip of land called the Neck. A Continental Congress meets in Philadelphia. Representatives from 12 colonies powwow about how to respond to the British threat to self-determination. Sammy Adams represents Massachusetts. It's like that scene in Star Wars where Poe thinks the Empire is about to defeat the rebels. Then,
there's just too many of them.
But there are more of us, Poe. There are more of us.
Look at this. Look at this.
Lando, you did it! You did it!
only cooler, because it's real. Gage sees the towns around Boston withdrawing their ammunition from the regional powder magazine. On September 1st, he sends 300 British regulars to retrieve powder and cannons from Cambridge. Church bells ring, and beacons are lit, like Gondor calling for aid in the return of the king. Only cooler, because it's real. Mulissimans swarm out of the countryside by the thousands. Gage cancels the next expedition, shuts down the general court, and dissolves the legislature. The Committee of Correspondence meets in Suffolk. Dr. Joseph Warren, writer of the Zinger Free America, pushes for the Suffolk Resolves. They include refusal of tax dollars to the royal government, a pledge of no obedience to the acts, and the urging of other colonies to raise militia. The resolves pass, and Paul Revere delivers a copy to Philadelphia. October 7th, 1774. The Patriot leaders meet at First Parish Church in Concord to create the Provincial Congress. Johnny Hancock is elected president. A committee of safety is created to obtain and store weapons and ammunition. William Heath is appointed general of the militia. Philadelphia, the Continental Congress passes declaration and resolves. It asserts the colonists' right to life, liberty, and property, lists grievances, petitions King George III to tone things down before the conflict gets out of control, and endorses the Suffolk Resolves. Seriously, all the events between the Boston Tea Party to the Declaration of Resolves could be its own movie. Second Thoughts, pages 20 through 30. December 13th, 1774. Not sure if it was a Friday or not. General Gage sends a force to collect the ammunition at Fort William and Mary in New Hampshire. Revere rides from Boston and alerts the Patriots of Plymouth, not the vehicle. 400 militia men confront the 6 regulars in the fort. The militia assault the fort. The regulars fire their cannons over the heads of the colonials. The fort surrenders after the soldiers are roughed up a bit. The militia hauls away 100 barrels of gunpowder before the British force arrives. Say, these are the first shots of the American Revolution. On February 26, 1775, Gage sends an expedition to Salem, Massachusetts, not to hunt witches though, to collect gunpowder and cannons. Once again, riders like Paul Revere spread the alarm. The Americans raise a drawbridge. The British commander, Alexander Leslie, threatens to fire on the militia. That includes future Secretary of War, Timothy Pickering. A minister proposes a compromise. The bridge is lowered. The British allowed to march to where the cannons are supposedly stored. They do not find them, turn around, and march back. The event becomes known as Leslie's Retreat. Bloodshed avoided. For now. Winter 1775 sees an arm race between the British and the colonialists. Patriots like William Dawes, who once beat up a British soldier for assaulting his wife in his own house, steals cannons and moves them out of the city and into the country. Climax of Act 1, pages 30 through 35. In March, the Provincial Congress votes to oppose British enforcement of the Intolerable Acts, including incursions into the countryside, and creates the Minutemen system. No, not that Minutemen system. In February, Gage sends spies to inquire about mass quantities of ammunition and powder. In Cambridge, a black waitress recognizes them and says, "It's a very fine country, and we have many fine and brave men to fight for it. If you go much further, you will find it to be true." They skedaddle. On March 20th, Gage sends out spies on a scouting mission to Concord to see about cannons at 65-year-old Colonel James Barrett's farm. The same black waitress recognizes them again and says, "Colonel Smith, you will find employment enough for you and all of General Gage's men in a few months." They hightail it back to Boston before the militia can capture them. Gage decides to use the road to Concord. On April 8th, Revere rides out to Concord to alert the Congress of possible British marches.
It was actually a rerun.
Military stores are moved away. Then Gage receives a letter from Lord Dartmouth, Secretary of State for the Colonies. It orders him to arrest Sammy Adams and Johnny Hancock, and that the colonialists should be repelled by force. Act 2. Rising Tensions, pages 30 through 40. April 15th, Gage calls troops off their normal positions. The regulars practice shooting with life-sized targets. Revere and the spies alert Dr. Warren, who is collecting intelligence for the Committee of Safety. The Provincial Congress meets at Concord. After it adjourns, Sam Adams and John Hancock head to Lexington. April 16th, Paul Revere observes that boats belonging to the Royal Navy have been lowered down into the bay. He rides to Lexington to alert Adams and Hancock of a possible British expedition. They come up with a plan about how to alert each other about British directions. April 17th, the Committee of Safety votes to move the cannons and other weapons out of Concord. April 18th, Minutemen see the cannons being moved and head to Concord to join the militia. Night of April 18th, Gage sends horsemen to patrol the roads between Cambridge and Concord, not the airplane. Sergeant William Monroe of the Lexington militia is alerted. He posts guards at the Hancock Courthouse, where Hancock and Adams are staying, and sends out his own horsemen. Meanwhile, in Boston, Dr. Warren receives word of the British march upon Concord. Believing they intend to arrest Hancock and Adams, he tells Paul Revere and William Dawes to raise the alarm. Imperial officer Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith receives orders to have his men at the beach to board boats by 10 o'clock. Gage orders that no civilians can leave Boston that night. 9:30 p.m. Revere tells his contacts to put candles in the Old North Tower as signals. 1 if by land, meaning the regulars are crossing the neck. 2 if by sea, meaning the regulars are using the boats of the Royal Navy to cross the Charles River. He then rows across the river himself, passing right beneath the HMS Somerset, with oars muffled by a petticoat donated by a daughter of liberty.
It's still warm.
9:45, the contacts climb the 150 steps of the Old North Church's tower.
Somebody's stairs!
They hold up 2 lanterns by sea. British soldiers see the lanterns and rush toward the church. The contacts jump out windows just in the nick of time. 10 o'clock p.m. 700 British infantry and marines assemble on the beach of the Charles River under command of the plus-sized Lieutenant Colonel Smith and Major John Pitcairn, who has declared, "Send me to America, and by the faith of my body, these damned rebel bastards will disperse before I can get my sword out of the scabbard." 11 p.m. Paul Revere reaches the shores of Charlestown unnoticed. He sees the 2 lanterns and jumps on his horse, Brown Beauty. He gallops across the neck. He's pursued by a patrol, but outruns them when they become mired in mud. He rides to the countryside for the 11 miles to Lexington, stopping at the homes of Melissa and Minutemen, declaring, "The British are coming." Actually, since the colonials still consider themselves British, he declares, "The regulars are coming out." It's midnight when Paul Revere arrives at the Hancock Clark House north of the Lexington Green and raises his alarm. Sergeant Munro tells him to stop making all that noise. "Noise? You'll have noise enough before long. The regulars are out." Revere tells Hancock and Adams of the coming expedition. He gives them a note from Doc Warren, urging them to destroy the supplies in Concord. Other riders spread the word out over hundreds of miles of roads. There are so many riders that horses become scarce. They ride through every town, Middlesex, village, and farm, declaring, "The regulars are coming out. The redcoats are coming. The lobsterbacks are out." It's like the barking chain in 101 Dalmatians. Only cooler, because it's real. Dawes reaches Lexington at 12:30 after riding 16 miles. Meeting house bells ring. The captain of Melissa, John Parker, racked with tuberculosis, sends word for the men of Lexington to gather on the green. He sends his teenage son to watch the road. Revere and Dawes remount and continue to spread the message. They meet Dr. Samuel Prescott, who's been visiting his girlfriend. After determining he is a high son of liberty, they allow him to join in their endeavor. 1 o'clock a.m. April 19th, 1775. 4 mounted British scouts capture Revere. Dawes dashes down the road but falls off his horse. He escapes when he calls out, "Hello, my boys, I've got 2 of them," scaring the British off. Prescott jumps his horse over a pasture stone wall and hides in a thicket. The scouts threaten to blow Revere's brains out. Revere calmly tells them that 500 Mussulmen have gathered in Lexington. The scouts set him free as they ride off to warn Smith. Prescott reaches the home of Sergeant William Hartwell with a message for Captain William Smith of the Lincoln Minutemen. However, the sergeant is not at home, so his wife, Mary Hartwell, alerts Smith. The Lincoln Minutemen are the first to arrive at Concord. Prescott continues his ride. 2 a.m. The British cross the Charles River and take the Menominee Road. A Minuteman, Josiah Nelson, comes out of his house and asks the British, "Have you heard anything about the regulars coming out?" A British officer strikes him on the head.
They drew first blood.
Revere returns to Lexington, finds Adams and Hancock are still there. Hancock wants to join the Musa on the battlefield. Adams tells him, "That is not our business. We belong to the cabinet." Hancock agrees to leave, with his girlfriend. "What a glorious morning this is," declares Adams. When the others look at him awkwardly, he clarifies, "I mean for America." Hancock remembers that he left his trunk at Lexington, full of important papers, including the names of the Provincial Congress. Revere returns to Lexington to retrieve the trunk. 3 a.m. Prescott arrives in Concord, the only messenger to make it that night. The ringing of bells calls the Mussulmen and Minutemen out, and they meet at Wright's Tavern, under command of Colonel Barrett. Supplies are destroyed or moved. Barrett buries cannons and supplies in his farm field. 3:30. The British column meets the officers who had captured Revere. They spin a tale of a country alive with Minutemen. Smith requests Gage for reinforcements. In Boston, Gage sends orders to Brigadier General His Grace Hugh Percy, 2nd Duke of Northumberland, to lead a relief expedition. The orders are placed on a table where they remain unopened. 4:15. Lexington. Parker Jr. tells his father the British are past the rocks. A half-hour away, William Drummond beats to arms to alert the colonists. Minutemen line up in a double row, their weapons primed and ready. Among them are Prince Estabrook, a slave, and Silas Bordeaux, a free man of color. Pastor Josiah Clark is asked if the men from his congregation will fight. "I have trained them," he replies. They would fight, and if need be, die too, under the shadow of the house of God. Revere gets the trunk. As he and a friend emerge from the Hancock Clark house with the trunk in hand, he sees the regulars coming in. He and his friend hide the trunk in the woods just as the column enters the green. Obstacles, pages 40 through 50. 5 a.m. Lexington. Parker turns to his men and says,
"Tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!"
No, that wasn't it.
Spartans! Ready your breakfast and eat hearty. For tonight, we dine in hell!
No, that wasn't either.
Stand your ground. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here.
Okay, that might have been it. According to Revere, what Parker most likely said was, "Let the soldiers pass by. Do not molest them without they being first. The first man who offers to run will be shot down." The British column heads right for the Minutemen on the green. Major Pitcairn rides forward, orders his men to load their muskets, and move forward in a double-time march. He believes an active campaign in burning a town or two will put everything to right. It's 400 regulars and Royal Marines versus 70-odd Minutemen by about 50 yards. The regulars tried to unnerve the Americans with shouts and huzzas, frightened them with their 17-inch bayonets on their muskets. "Lay down your arms, you damned rebels, and disperse," Pitcairn orders Parker's men. Parker tells his men to disperse. Several begin walking away. A few stand their ground. No man leaves their weapon as ordered by Pitcairn. "Damn you, why don't you lay down your arms?" screams the major. Suddenly, a shot rings out. The British, 40 yards away, open up with a volley. Pitcairn orders them to stop firing. The regulars ignore his command. They level their 17 inches of cold steel and charge the few Americans who remain in the fight. Estabrook is wounded. Isaac Muzzy is killed right before his father's eyes. 63-year-old Robert Monroe is bayoneted on the green in front of his children. Jonathan Harrington is wounded and crawls to his house, where he dies at his wife's feet. Caleb Harrington steps out of the meeting house, where he had been collecting powder. He flees, but is shot and killed in the back, like Bruce Dern did John Wayne in the Cowboys. Prisoners taken by the British try to escape. They are shot down like the Blood did Ricky and Boys in the Hood. In all, 8 Americans are killed and 10 wounded. Only 2 British are wounded, and Pitcairn's horse is hit twice. Pastor Clark looks on as 8 of his friends and prisoners lay dead on the green. From this day, he says, will be dated the liberty of the world. 5:30 a.m. Smith sends word to gauge the shooting and continues the Concord. Parker's men return to the green, capture 6 regulars. In Concord, Militia and Minutemen hear word of the shooting at Lexington. 150 Americans march towards Lexington. Midpoint, pages 50 through 60. 6:30 a.m. The marching Americans see the regulars. Heading toward them have 4 times their number. There's a musical standoff between the drummers and flutists of both columns as the colonials return. They are ordered not to fire unless the British fire first. As Smith sends out flankers, the Minutemen fall back, crossing the North Bridge. Meanwhile, General Heath and Dr. Joseph Warren hold a war council in Monotony after hearing of the slaughter at Lexington. 7 a.m. The regulars search Concord for supplies. Smith orders the Liberty Pole cut down and burned. He sends companies to secure the North Bridge, and another company to search Barrett's farm for cannons and supplies. Boston, Gage receives the report from Smith about the skirmish at Lexington. In Concord, Smith and Pitcairn stand in a cemetery and observe the rising number of militias surrounding the town. It gives them a grave feeling. Smith sends out companies to clear the area. Believe it or not, the Americans fall back to Ripley Ridge. 8 a.m. Colonel Barrett and Major John Buttrick call muster the nearly 500 militiamen and minutemen on Packasacket Hill, or however you say that. They see that Brits in 3 companies guard the North Bridge. William Emerson, whose grandson will later write a Hymn of Concord, declares, "Let us stand our ground. If we die, let us die here." The supplies at Barrett's farm are buried in the fields, hidden under furrows made by plows. As the regulars ransack the farm in vain, Mrs. Barrett prepares food and drink for her enemies, as the good book declares. When the regulars pay her, she replies, "This is the price of blood." The British find cannon in Concord, burn the carriages and wooden tools. The lobsterbacks set fire to the town's meeting house. The fire spreads to nearby buildings. A local woman, Martha Mouton, convinces the soldiers to put the fires out. The militiamen and minutemen on Packasacket Hill, or whatever it's called, see the smoke. They think the town is burning and are ready to march into the middle of town, for its defense, or die in the attempt. Others ask their leaders, "Will you let them burn the town?" Colonel Barrett asked Captain Isaac Davis, who had that morning left his family sick with scarlet fever in the town of Axon, for his thoughts. "I haven't a man who's afraid to go," replies Davis. Barrett orders Colonel John Robertson and Major John Buttrick to take 400 men down to the bridge. They are not to fire unless fired upon. After that, they are to fire as fast as they can. This is the first time that an American force with a command structure has been ordered to take to the field on the offense. The minutemen march down as the band plays the White Cockade. The regulars fall back across the bridge, taking up planks as they go. Major Buttrick turns to the advancing Americans and asks, if we were of his mind, he would drive them away from the bridge, not tear them up. The militia answer in a rousing, singing voice. When asked if they would continue the march, the Axon men lead the column in a forward lurch. 9:30 a.m. The North Bridge. The Americans and British are within 75 yards of each other when the regulars fire. Private Abner Hosmer and Captain Davis are killed. 4 more militiamen are wounded. "Fire!" orders Major Buttrick. "For God's sakes, fellow soldiers!" The advance guard and minutemen step on the bridge. Closing the distance to 50 yards, the British retreat as the Americans open fire with shots heard round the world. The British retreat over the bridge, scattering on the north bank and leaving their wounded behind. "Now the war has begun," says the Minuteman, "and no one knows when it will end." Obstacles, pages 60 through 70. Meanwhile, General Percy leaves Boston at the head of his column of 1,000 men and 2 6-pound cannons. They are shadowed by minutemen. They reach Brighton Bridge to discover the Committee of Safety has removed planks. However, the planks are piled up on the roadside and are quickly replaced. The band plays Yankee Doodle to mock the Americans. A boy tells them they will soon be dancing the Chevy Chase, a mocking reference to the Battle of Otterburn, where another Percy of Northumberland had been defeated. 10:30 a.m. Concord. The empty-handed British return from Barrett's farm, pretending not to have heard the shots of the bridge, believing that the colonials would not dare fire on the king's troops. They encounter a pile of dead regulars and officers. One body was mutilated. Rumors swirl that the Americans are scalping and cutting the ears off regulars. Smith realizes the expedition has failed and prepares to return to Boston. Americans in outlying towns race the back roads like the Dukes of Hazzard and prepare an 18-mile gauntlet along the road to Boston. Among them are Captain Parker's militia, some bandits from the earlier skirmish, prepared to avenge their slain friends and family. As Smith leaves Concord,
It's not your village anymore!
he places flankers on the sides of the road. The Americans guarding the North Bridge cross over and trail the column. High noon, the regulars reach a bend in the road called Merriam's Corner. They must cross over Tanner's Brook. Waiting for them on the other side are 1,000 militia, including Samuel Whitney, a black slave. The British fire into the militia at 100 yards. The Americans return fire. Tanner's Brook is the Rubicon of the American Revolution.
Hasta la vista, baby.
The Americans used guerrilla warfare, fire from behind fences, houses and barns, and boulders and trees before melting away into the countryside. One militia company opens fire, falls back, another steps up, takes their place, and opens fire again. Smith sends out flankers who catch militia by surprise and kill several. In a moment of comic relief, two regulars stop shooting at a fleeing American as they declare, "See that Yankee? We have killed him twice, and look, he can run yet." Meanwhile, Percy's column marches through monotony. Their supply wagons are 30 minutes behind. At 1 a.m., the regulars reach Brooks Hill. 500 Minutemen pour down steady fire from the crest. Smith orders a charge up the hill. The Americans, led by the veteran brothers Nixon, no, not that Nixon, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Nixon and Captain John Nixon, hold their ground and inflict heavy casualties. At the bridge into Lincoln, no, not that Lincoln, Sergeant John Ford, no, not that John Ford, kills 5 of the British soldiers.
Leave anything for us?
Just bodies.
Around 1:30, the regulars approach an area where the road rises, then curves sharply to the left, and passes through a small wooded area. The Brits are caught in a crossfire, catching fire from the right, left, and behind. They break into a trot, their retreat becoming a rout from the bloody angle.
Get off my plane.
The British walk into another crossfire, the militia firing at them from behind houses, taverns, and other buildings. The Minutemen taunt the redcoats by yelling, "Wakanda forever!" No, it wasn't that. They yell, "King Hancock forever!" The boulder from behind which William Thoring fires becomes known as Minuteman Boulder. Meanwhile, the supply wagons of the column take the wrong road. 12 bad dudes, veterans of the French and Indian War considered too old for the militia, led by David Lampson, a Native American, open fire from behind a wall of stones. The wagon drivers jump from the wagons and flee. Lampson and his men have the honor of being the first Americans to capture British provision wagons during the American Revolution, proving that old guys rule. It's like the Expendables, only cooler, because it's real. After abandoning their wagons, the teamsters, no, not those teamsters, meet an old woman, Mother Bathrick, digging up dandelions. They insist upon surrendering to her. She turns them over to the militia and tells them, "If you ever get back, you tell King George an old woman took 6 of his grenadiers prisoner." Now that's a strong woman. Rising tensions and obstacles, pages 70 through 80. Around 2 p.m., as Percy's troops approach Lexington from the east, they hear gunfire. Captain John Parker and over 100 of his Lexington men have ambushed Smith. Parker's like,
Oh, boys! I'm back!
and orders a heavy fire into the redcoats. The skirmish becomes known as Parker's Revenge. Smith attempts to rally his men on 80-foot-high Fistkill, but is wounded in the thigh and knocked from his horse. Pitcairn assumes command, threatens the regulars with death if they leave the line. Then he is thrown from his mount. His horse has enough sense to escape to the Americans. Percy arrives in Lexington in the nick of time. He forms his men on high ground and fires his cannons at the Americans, dispersing them. One cannonball flies through the Lexington meeting house, souring the militia with splinters of wood. The Fusiliers charge the militia. It's like when the Soviet gunship shows up at Red Dawn and guns down C. Thomas Howe. PM, Lexington. Percy orders his regulars to create a shield around the infantry as they pass through Lexington. Cannons pepper the countryside. British officers at the front of the column threaten troops with death if they attempt to retreat, surrender, or desert. Percy inspires his men by promising a rest in Cambridge. The British order John Raymond, a cripple, to serve them drinks. He tries to escape and is shot down in the back like the Viet Cong did Sergeant Ellis in Platoon. American marksmen get closer to the column, fire on the regulars. As Minutemen and militia run out of ammunition, they are replaced by new arrivals. 3:30 p.m. The British march toward Monotony, 4.5 miles away. Percy and Smith send out flankers who plunder houses and set others on fire. A faithful Slave extinguishes flames at one house. A woman stands in the doorway of her home, shooting and hurling trigger words at the regulars. The British shoot her and everyone in the house. General Heath arrives at Lexington with Joseph Warren. The Americans surround the British with a circle of skirmishers. A ring of fire, to quote Johnny Cash. Houses are converted into fortresses, and bridges over streams dismantled. The British reach Pierce's Hill at 4:30. The train forces the flankers into the column. Americans fire and slip away. Then the regulars reach the foot of the rocks, where 2,000 militia and Minutemen wait for them. Hand-to-hand combat breaks out. Dr. Warren joins the fighting. A ball comes so close to his head that it takes a pin out of his earlock, and his pretty hair falls on his shoulders. Percy loses a button off his uniform and orders the cannons to open fire once again. Boom! The Americans are dispersed. Rising tensions. Obstacles, pages 80 through 85. In Monotony, Jason Russell declares, "A man's house is his castle." He barricades his door and takes up a position with his rifle. He allows militiamen from Danvers to take up positions in his house. The British enter town at 4:45 p.m. Some of the bloodiest and fiercest fighting of the day begins as the regulars attack every house. They are fired upon from all directions, sometimes as close as 10 yards. They kill an old man in a chair and another in a bed. They enter the Russell house and kill 11 militiamen with their 18-inch long blades. The Danvers militia will have some of the highest casualties of the day. Russell's wife returns to find his dead body pierced with 2 bullet holes and 11 bayonet wounds, and the floor covered in blood, up to the ankle. Disaster, pages 85 through 90. The madness of war is on full display as Percy's men enter the community of Cooper's Tavern. The 78-year-old Samuel Whitmore is like,
Get off my lawn.
He kills a regular with his musket, blows another away, wounds 2 more with his pistol. Then he swings his sword, turning redcoats redder left and right. The regulars shoot him in the face, club him with their muskets, and bayonet him 14 times. When his family finds him in a bloody pool, they ask him if he regrets going out to fight. He replies, "I should do so just again." He lives to be 98 years old.
Old man, my ass.
Crisis, pages 90 through 95. 5:30 p.m. The British are almost to Cambridge. Percy uses his cannons to keep the Americans at a distance, but the Americans now number 4,000. They no longer fear the artillery. Among them is Cliff Whitmore, a slave who wins his own freedom by serving in the American Revolution. At Watson's Corner, militiamen, led by Major Isaac Gardner, hide behind line cask. "America! Rise up and open fire!" British flankers sneak up behind them, open fire on them. Major Gardner is the highest officer killed that day. Then, in a scene straight out of the Insane Asylum segment in The Big Red One,
I am one of you. I am sane. I am sane.
William Macy, a man of feeble intellect, sits on a wall and claps with delight because he thinks he's watching a parade. A British soldier shoots him dead. Climax of Act 2, pages 95 through 100. Dr. William Aspen Wall, blind in his right eye, believes Percy is going to take the road to Charleston. The Americans, believing that the British will take the road to Cambridge, have again removed the planks from the bridge and hidden them this time. Aspinwell tells the militia captain about his hunts, almost like he's a seer from ancient Greek drama. The captain replies, "Fake news." When the British do take the road to Charleston at the last minute, Doc Aspinwall jumps on a wall and yells, "There they go, boys! Whoever wants a chance to do some good, follow me!" Half the company follows him as they chase the redcoats into Charlestown. The Doc compensates for his blind right eye by firing from his left side.
Death.
Climax of Act 3, pages 1 through 105. 6 p.m. Boston is in sight. One final obstacle, Prospect Hill, crested with militia, stands in the British way. Cannons drive off the Americans. 66-year-old James Milius is the oldest man to die that day. 14-year-old Edward Barber, the youngest. Only an hour of daylight is left when Melissa, led by future Secretary of State Colonel Pickering, arrives. While waiting for instructions from General Heath, the British escape into Charlestown.
Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon.
By 6:30, the British stop running and take a stand on the high ground of Breeds and Bunker Hills. Under the guns of the HMS Somerset, the ship's cannons opened fire on the Melissa and the Minutemen. The last American killed is a slave, Caesar Augustus. The booming of cannon is quickly replaced by the roar of a thunderstorm as night falls. Descending action, pages 105 through 110. The British have lost 273 men, dead, wounded, or missing. The Americans, 95. Like rookie underweights, the Americans have held their own against the reigning champions. The next morning, Gage awakes to see that Melissas from New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Connecticut have arrived. Now between 15,000 and 20,000 Americans surround him and his army. He withdraws all of his men from the neck in Charlestown, giving up the high ground of Breeds and Bunker Hills. The British who once tried to bottle up the rebellion in Boston are now bottled up there themselves. The siege of Boston has begun. Wrap-up, pages 110 through 115. The final scene of a movie about Lexington and Concord would be a montage of writers and members of the Committee of Safety writing to spread news of the battle to the other colonies, from New Hampshire to Georgia. The next time the Continental Congress meets in response to the shots fired at Lexington and Concord, there will be delegates from all 13 colonies. It's like that scene in Endgame.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Only cooler. Much, much cooler. Because it's real. Because it resulted in the freedoms, liberties, independence, and rights we so enjoy today. And that's why the battles of Lexington and Concord should be an epic 4th of July summer blockbuster release, honoring those who fought and died for our freedom. Now, smash that like button like it's a cask of East India tea, hit follow like you are a Minuteman who just heard Paul Revere say the Redcoats are coming out, and share this video like freedom ringing over the land! God bless America!
Of heroes cluster, who's gone to wear a chain? Then guard your rights, Americans, nor stoop to lawless sway. Oppose, 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 oppose for North America. Some future day shall cry.
Revere returns to Lexington, finds Adamson Smith still there. Disaster, pages 85 through 90. The madness of war is on full display. The madness of war is on full display as Percy